Hello and welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm your host Morgan. Today I have a question on my mind, and that question is, how old can single organisms get? And the specific reason that we're singling out single organisms is because I am fully aware that there are colonial organisms like aspens and certain fungi and bacteria that because they produce clones, they're technically genetically identical, so they can get very, very old, but they are not one single organism living for a very long time. So today, we're going to be talking about the organism that's thought to be the single oldest living organism on the planet, and that is the bristlecone pine tree. So what specific pine tree are we talking about when we're talking about bristlecone pine trees? Well, specifically, it's the Great Basin bristlecone pine tree, or Pinus longevia. I apologize for being very bad at pronouncing Latin names. And this particular species can only be found in California, Nevada, and Utah. And they're known for growing just below the tree line on the top of mountain ranges, so between 9,000 and 11,000 feet in elevation. And they occur in very small groves, and I'm sure you've seen ones like the one in the photo that have this very gnarled appearance. They can appear almost dead looking to someone that doesn't know better, and they don't exactly have what you think of as that tree appearance. However, if they do occur at lower elevations, which is uncommon, but they do and can occur at the lower elevations, they won't have this gnarled appearance. They'll look more like what you think of when you think of a pine tree. So why do they have this very gnarled appearance? Well, it's because since they're growing right at that tree line area, they're going to be contending with very extreme conditions. So the wind, the snow, the rain, and it's going to affect them in ways very different to their more protected counterparts at lower elevations. These extreme conditions mean that they're going to have very slow growth. And because of this very slow growth, they're also going to have wood that is very dense. And this dense wood means they're going to have resistance to things like fungi, insects, rot, and erosion. And that's just because their wood is more dense, therefore more protection. And since this is very slow growth, for some years, they're just not going to have a growth ring. So for most trees, if you were to take a cross section, you could count the rings and approximate how old they are, because they get about one ring per year. Now, you can count the rings of the bristlecone pine trees. However, you have to take into account that because they don't grow a growth ring for every year because of these extreme conditions and the slow growth, that your estimate is going to actually be younger than the tree really is. Also, the other thing that this elevation and where they grow gives them as an advantage over their lower elevation cousins is a protection from wildfires, because the little annuals that tend to burn up really fast down on the forest floor, they're just not really there at the tree line. The tree line is very harsh and very few things are going to survive. These bristlecone pine trees are one of those few things that survive. So up at these higher elevations, where we're going to focus for the remainder of this video, they are protected because of the slow growth. So they have the dense wood that protects them from things getting into the wood and harming them. And then they're protected from fire because not much else grows up there that can actually burn and create an out of control wildfire. Now that we've addressed the fact that the bristlecone pine trees are known to grow at the high elevations and have this very slow growth and all that fun stuff, how old exactly are they estimated to get? Well, what we know is that they can live upwards of 4,900 years. And I know that's a weird number, but that's the number that is usually gone with because that's the number that has been confirmed for some of the oldest specimens, which we'll talk about in a second. So I mentioned at the beginning that there are colonial organisms like quaking aspens that can reproduce asexually, so through cloning, that have been estimated to be much older. However, that is not one single organism, that is the entire grove of clones, and as they grow, different trees will die off. So when you're talking about this grove of colonial quaking aspens being very, very old, you're not really talking about one organism. You're talking about this set of clones, and it's just a little bit different. So that's how we're distinguishing here. I do realize that we have these colonial fungi and groves of trees as well that have been estimated to be much, much older, but there are discrepancies in those estimates and discrepancies about whether or not they can be really considered the oldest, quote, organism. But we're not getting into that today. We're talking about these single organisms that don't reproduce through cloning. So we can confirm these are the oldest living single organisms. So again, the bristlecone pine trees, they're in groves, and they're not a bunch of clones. They can only reproduce by the pollination in the seeds. Now, bristlecone pines will often be confused with another species of pine, with specifically limber pines, so Pinus flexus. And you can see the bristlecone pine right here has these 1-inch long needles and these little packets of 5. Their needles cover their entire branch, and their young cones are going to be a purplish color. And then, of course, the mature cones that give them their name turn brown, and all of the scales will be tipped with the little claw-like bristles. The limber pine, on the other hand, has much longer needles. They'll be about 1.5 to 3 inches long. They're also in packets of 5, so if you're looking at needles, again, the longer the needles, the more likely you're looking at a limber pine. And unlike the bristlecone pines that have their needles all along the branch, limber pines are only going to be found at the tip, and their pine cones don't have any bristles. So that's an easy way to know for sure that you're looking at a bristlecone pine tree. So where can you find them? Well, there's a few places that are fairly easy to get to where you can actually go see bristlecone pine trees. One place is the ancient bristlecone forest in the Inyo National Forest in the White Mountains of California. Now, this particular area is home to the largest bristlecone pine tree in the world, known as the Patriarch, and home to possibly the oldest tree in the world, Methuselah. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Another place that has easily accessible groves of bristlecone pine trees is Great Basin National Park. And they have specifically 3 groves, one of which is much easier to get to than the other ones. Now, if you're watching this video on the day that it goes up, hopefully I am hiking out to the Wheeler Peak Grove. And as I said, this is the most accessible grove of the 3 groves in Great Basin National Park. So if you were a little confused about why I'm talking about a tree out of the blue, that's why. Because I'm hoping to go see these really cool trees today if you're watching this the day the video goes up, or in the future. So whatever context you want to go with here. And then the other 2 groves are the Mount Washington Grove, which is the largest grove of the bristlecones in the park, and the Eagle Peak Grove. However, these last 2 groves are a little bit more difficult to get to. Let's talk about 2 specific bristlecone pine trees, Prometheus and Methuselah. But let's begin with Prometheus. So in 1964, a geographer by the name of Donald R. Curry was doing research on Ice Age glaciology around Wheeler Peak. Now, some of you may know, some of you may not, Great Basin National Park has a glacier, the Wheeler Peak Glacier, and that's also near the Wheeler Peak Grove of bristlecone pine trees. So all this ties in together. Curry got permission to take core samples from bristlecone pine trees. And basically, core samples are a way that you can age the tree without killing it. Because if you were to fell the tree to get the cross section, you could count the rings, but you'd also be killing the tree. The core section takes a little portion. And because of the way bristlecone pine trees grow, part of their bark can be entirely stripped off, but the other portion of the tree can keep growing. And that's just one of the cool things about these trees. So there was one tree in particular that he believed to be over 4,000 years old, and the locals called this tree Prometheus. Now, at this point, nobody knows exactly what happened. Either his borer was too short or Curry was just inexperienced taking core samples from trees that large. But he ended up wanting a cross section of the tree instead of just a core sample. So he got permission to cut the tree down and ultimately end its life. Once the growth rings were counted, it was found that Prometheus had 4,862 growth rings. At this point, remember that bristlecone pine trees don't produce a growth ring for every year. So the tree was actually estimated to be about 4,900 years old at the time of death. Now, at this time, the oldest known living tree was in the White Mountains of California, and it had been determined to be 4,847 years old. So had Prometheus not died, Prometheus would have been the oldest living tree after the confirmation estimation of his age. This brings us to Methuselah. Now, Methuselah is a bristlecone pine tree in the Inyo National Forest. Methuselah has a confirmed age of over 4,789 years old, and the exact location is kept a secret because as of right now, Methuselah is, from my understanding and my research, still considered to be the oldest confirmed living tree. Remember how I mentioned a tree in the White Mountains was older at the time of Prometheus' death? Well, people like vandalism, and I believe that tree has died as well. So Methuselah's location is kept a secret. The National Forest Service and all of that, they will not confirm where Methuselah is because they're trying to keep it safe from vandalism and trying to keep the tree safe from people that would like to cut it down. So in 2012, there was another tree found in the White Mountains, and it was confirmed to be at least 5,065 years old. I don't know for sure if that tree has a name. I don't know if they're referring to another tree. There's very little information around that one. But as far as I know of the named trees, Methuselah is the oldest one. I don't know much more about the tree that was found in 2012, other than up until I was researching for this video, Methuselah was the oldest known single living organism that was still alive. So I don't know anything else about the 2012 tree. I'm sure if some digging were done a little more, there's probably a paper about it somewhere. I just didn't find it. But this has been a little bit about bristlecone pine trees. They're really cool, and when you look at photos of them, part of your brain doesn't even register that that's still a living tree. So I hope that this was an enjoying little snippet of fun tree facts for you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, evening, what have you. If you enjoyed this video, if you like my little educational, naturey things, consider subscribing. If you like this video specifically, give it a thumbs up. Have you seen bristlecone pine trees? Are you going to go hike out to see some in the future? Do you think that I'm just telling you a bunch of tall tales about some really old trees? I don't know. Leave those thoughts and so much more in the comment section below if you would like me to interact with them. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next one. Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane V. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.